Hey, welcome back to another edition of Chris Comments. I'm Chris Garcia, your host. Show of common sense on common ground. Now, I really wasn't looking at anything for a while, but then this popped up on CNN. But I read the article instead of watched it. Here's what it entails. It's the same scheme, but it's all over again. It's repeated and altered a little differently. Here we go. New York struggling to accommodate surge in migrants as Texas begins busing them to the city. More migrants continue arriving. I'm going to be commenting as I read this off because it's going to be leading to something, speculation, but nevertheless very important speculation. Okay. More migrants continue arriving in New York City after city officials took aim at Texas Governor Greg Abbott for busing migrants detained at the border to the city as part of his campaign to draw attention to the influx of migrant crossings from Mexico. Although most migrants who arrived were from Venezuela and Colombia. While the city plans on opening more services and more emergency housing, officials struggle with the lack of coordination from Texas. And this is what they're talking about. Manuel Castro, the commissioner of the mayor's office of immigrant affairs, claims this: Texas essentially weaponized the situation. We've learned the bus company they've been working with has a non-disclosure agreement that does not allow them to communicate with the city of New York. That sounds like a huge struggle with a lack of coordination from Texas. Now, Greg Abbott's office administration responded with Renee Eze, Abbott's press secretary, claiming these migrants willingly chose to go to New York City, having signed a voluntary consent waiver available in multiple languages upon boarding that they agreed on the destination. Upon boarding, they agreed on the destination. If the mayor wants the solution to this crisis, he should call upon President Biden to take immediate action to secure the border, something President continues to failing to do. Okay, that was Renee Eze, and he did everything except talk about the communication of the non-disclosure agreement. Okay. Now, he talked about the waiver. Okay, the waiver. A copy of the waiver that was ascertained by the media reporters. I forgot who it was that did this report. I do apologize. A copy of the waiver that was ascertained lists the cities: Washington, D.C. and New York City. That's it. Okay? As the available destinations, and includes a line that absolves Texas and its officials from liability arising out of or in any way relating to any injuries and damages that may occur during the agreed transport to locations outside of Texas. That's what's on the waiver. We're going to bus you outside of the thing if you agree to. We're going to bus you outside of Texas if you agree to it, to a choice of city, which is only two that are available. And we're not going to be liable for anything that incurs during that time. That's what the waiver says. Abbott's office did not answer questions concerning that non-disclosure agreement for bus companies. But we can pretty much guess what's going on, given the fact that Manuel Castro, the commissioner of the mayor's office of immigrant affairs, that very same guy, he's quoting, as the buses arrived, the migrants were hungry, thirsty, and many sick. They were ill. And those were the immediate needs. Asylum seekers have particular needs, which is true. That is true as anybody out here in the U.S. I've got a healthy heart. The next person might have to require nitro and might need to renew the prescription in this country, which might not be possible. But who knows? I mean, I'm not in charge of the emergency housing, so I don't really know how hard or easy that would actually be. But yeah, Greg Abbott is dumping people there, and he's not cooperating with anything through the buses who have a non-disclosure agreement, and a clause that absolves them from anything. It's a real piece of work. But out of all of that, this is what caught my attention. It was somewhere in the middle of that entire article. This is what caught my attention. Although a small number of migrants did want to come to New York, there were a couple of them that wanted to go to New York City. There were many of them, if not most of them, that were seeking a final destination in Chicago, Miami, Maryland, and North Carolina. Okay, that's what caught my attention. People were claiming and reporting to the people in New York, migrants reported to New Yorkers, that they technically had a destination, and it wasn't New York. It was one of these cities: Chicago, Miami, Maryland, and North Carolina. Now, speculation could say Chicago for the industry, Miami for the tourist industry, Maryland probably a port or harbor job. I don't really know. But we do know what's in North Carolina, and that's a lot of farmland. And farmland, I've talked about. I raised the point when I noticed back in April an article that was stating only the New York Times noticed that Abbott's buses are now dropping migrants off in Georgia, Alabama, and North Carolina. That's what caught my attention. And the reason for this is because those migrants were deported out of those farming lands in Georgia, Alabama, and North Carolina, where agricultural industry is pretty profitable, where many migrants worked as farm workers there. Farm workers, immigrants, worked only on average of 33 weeks out of the year. That's an average of 192 days or 6 months and change, for 45 hours in a 5-day work week, earning $10.60 per hour. Now, don't get me wrong, Texas still has $7.25 per hour as the minimum wage. So they're doing better than Texas in Alabama, Georgia, and North Carolina. But it was still 50 cents less than what the minimum wage required for a federal level. And $10.60, it's good, despite the fact that it's a little bit more than what any man or woman American would be making on those lines in the fields, pulling crops and all that good stuff, working the farmlands coming out of the agricultural business, a business that can profit up to $132 billion per year. Back when Trump authorized deportations of migrant workers, the farmers banked big in keeping the money that they no longer had to pay the migrants that was supposed to go to the migrant workers. They didn't have to pay it. And the example to that is what I've stated before. Going with an American employee, every business back then before the pandemic had to pay $7,500. It was $7,500 for every business to put a new hire into their business. And whatever the business was, that worker went through a probationary period, whether it be a quarter of a year, half a year, if not an entire year. I personally worked once at a manufacturing assembly job that didn't hire me on until a year and a half, despite the fact that it stated you only had 1 year probation. Then you could stop being a temp, or you could stop being considered a brand new hire, and you could actually be an employee. An official employee gets that promotion. In some cases, it's also that promotion of being an official employee hire-on with a pay raise. In other cases, it's an official employee hire-on title with a pay raise and stock options. And finally, an official employee hire-on with a pay raise and health benefits and a stock option. Now, some businesses didn't have all of that, but it ranged from just being a hire-on all the way to all of those benefits and stocks. Okay, now those are Americans. Those are the Americans that get to do that. Illegals, or just plain migrant workers, more than likely didn't. Again, they worked for $10.60 per hour, 45-hour work week, and a 5-day work week, 45 hours a day, a 5-day work week. I'm just now catching what I'm saying. See, my problem is that I'm reading ahead of schedule while I'm trying to speak this stuff. I'm moving into the next segment. $10.60, 45 hours a week, and a 5-day work week out of only 33 weeks out of the year. Okay? When they were supposed to get either the pay raise or just the pay that they were supposed to get while working under the plantations, on those plantations, all of that money the agricultural people kept, the agricultural businesses kept. And that's what I'm talking about, what reminded me when I saw North Carolina and the complications of the busing. There are people there are still migrants that wanted to go to North Carolina because they are farm workers. Farm workers more than likely wanted them there because of how great the profits are when they've got them, and how even greater the profits are when they're deported and they don't have to get paid. Now, that's that, and the scheme concerning the bus. Okay, this is kind of a thing that leads to speculation, but nevertheless, it's very important. Okay, it's very important that the scheme is to get those migrants back to the farmlands. Is because the farm industries had taken out an insurance claims in 2018. After their workers were deported, the claims were made. Therefore, it's time to rehire to possibly bank this way again in the near future. So they want these migrants to come, and should they get deported again, then the farmland owners could file insurance. Hey, I got to be compensated for all these crops that are not being pulled out of the ground and sent to go be put up for sale. I'm not profiting, blah, 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 blah. Now, again, it's mostly skepticism, but it appears to be vital not to ignore this, especially if the powers that be could actually catch the corrupt in the act and possibly stop the process of this corporate criminality. It's very important that they see that. One of the ways that they could see that is what I've posted on, I can't remember the site, but I can't remember the post that I did. But it was concerning the migrants and the holding facilities, where some of those kids that were caged, and some of these families that were ascertained after capturing traffickers, they were placed in holding facilities. And get this, somebody outside the facilities was trying to work deals with the employees of the refugee asylums, and claiming that because there was a deal that was made, those people paid the traffickers to bring them into the States. It's my job, and ergo me, to get profited on for picking them up and taking them wherever. Okay, wherever it is that they need to be placed, wherever it is that they're to go. Once that was exposed, that's when a lot of tougher stuff, technically tougher stuff happened. However, it was all with my Texas governor complicating things. Okay, instead of finding more people that would come to the holding facilities and say, hey, I need to get paid, give me those kids or that family, because I still need to get paid. Instead of arresting them, Greg Abbott had cops going all over the place, making criminals out of people who had misdemeanor charges into felons, and then going to truck stops along the border, checking tires, and making sure that the trucks had fuel, proper fluids. Nobody was really doing any hardcore handlings of those traffickers on this side of the border that were saying, I still need to get paid. So why am I bringing that up? Because of the very end of the article, that little bit of the article that I just read earlier. Although some number of migrants did want to come to New York, most that arrived were seeking their final destination, Chicago, Miami, Maryland, North Carolina. Those very same farmlands. And again, speculation says that they're going to do industrial work, harbor work, and industrial and tourism industry. Sorry. Those cities with companies, even not just those cities, but with those cities that have companies and corporations that will hire immigrants and put them through those low-paying wages without benefits and tri periods and all this stuff, at the risk of being deported. Ergo, those corporations profiting big off of the money that they were supposed to spend on those migrants, pay those migrants. So how are they supposed to get there to Chicago, Miami, Maryland, North Carolina, and also Alabama, Georgia as well, and any other farming community through the agricultural industry? How are they supposed to get to Miami, where obviously the dominant industry is tourism, where migrants are put to good use there? How are they supposed to get to Maryland? How are they supposed to get to Chicago? Well, we already know how trafficking migrants work with the wrong side of the law. Is it really going to be that difficult to figure out because it's done by politicians? Greg Abbott more than likely got paid for taking them to Georgia, Alabama, and North Carolina, where those farmlands were. Okay, now it probably didn't go directly into his hand, but he profited off of this. Using tax-paying dollars to bus the migrants to those locations while dropping off, I think, 2 bus loads in Washington, D.C. back in April. Well, now he's got them all going to D.C. and New York instead of Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, Maryland, Miami, and Chicago, where their destination is supposed to be. Somebody has to get those migrants from DC and New York to those cities. How do you think that's going to get done? Through traffickers? Illegal traffickers? Hey, these guys came in legally. If they came out of the holding facilities of Texas, here in Texas, then they were bussed, that means they were not somebody that just crossed the border. They were not somebody that just swam the river. They were already in our custody. So it's not illegal traffickers. They're going to take them to those cities. No, it's somebody it is illegal, but it's somebody that's going to be making sure that Abbott, who's profiting off of this, gets his cut. Now, I'm not a detective. I'm not a cop. You know, I'm not a cop that disobeys rules and goes out and finds kind of stuff. I wouldn't know where to search. But I got a pretty good feeling that the law enforcement agencies would have a good inclination, you know. And I'm pretty sure that the government agencies themselves, have some good, you know, surveillance and trackers and all this good stuff to find out where those people who are supposed to be destined to Chicago all the way down to North Carolina, you know, I'm pretty sure they can find out how they're getting there, and whether or not it's somebody that's collecting a fee, and then trace it to my Texas governor, Greg Abbott, the one that's busing them. No longer to the farmlands directly, but to New York and DC. Okay? Despite the fact that the farmlands are their migrants' actual destiny, despite the fact that Chicago, Miami, and Maryland are their actual destiny. So it doesn't really take a genius to figure it out. You know? My question is, how much longer do we have to wait? Like, are there different factions secretly that need to be named and all this stuff? Are there, you know, is it that there's just one driver that they're focused on because that's the only one that sticks his head out? You know, it's got my curiosity, and I really, really wonder how much longer do we have to wait for this? But that's the deal right there. I had to bring that up. I was really looking forward to enjoying the start of the work week, and I did. I think I came up with something concerning stop hating the Asians thing, and I wound up giving the history and the reasons why not to, and all this good stuff. But I had to bring up the busing situation because it's still a problem. It's still something that everybody is complaining about, and it's just got me so curious, you know, because in my eyes it's all about the money. Belief is the tool, you know. Well, we know what the belief is. Abbott thinks he's doing the state of Texas a great service with this busing thing, and the majority of my state believes him. He's not going to be leaving power anytime soon because the majority of the state literally believes that Abbott is making us secure, far more secure nation by busing the migrants to DC, and everything is always Biden's fault, the president's fault, you know. Even the situation of Uvalde Elementary School shooting, okay, the only thing that he said was, this is all Biden's fault. The guy has been living in America for the past 18 years. He was just born. No. Oops, sorry. The guy wasn't really a migrant. He bounced back and forth between countries. But to think that this was all authorized under Biden or president and some administration and all this other crap, that's just BS. But get this, the majority of my Texas believes him. Oh, man. Yeah, I had to bring this up because I was looking at this article and just seeing how complicated things were getting, and which all makes sense as to why, DC and NYC are trying to ask Biden for help. And it all explains why my governor and his administration are saying, hey, you don't like what's going on, go to Biden. Despite the fact that they're the ones causing the trouble. So, but that one thing got my attention real quick and had me digging through all my other notebooks that I've been writing all this crap down. Yeah. A small number of migrants did want to work in New York, but the majority of them already had destinations. They were seeking Chicago, Miami, Maryland, and North Carolina. That little part caught my attention. That little part has got me yapping to, dry mouth right now. That little part has got me right back to the speculation that this is a hustle. It's not just for political votes. It's for profit. And this is the way that he's doing it. It's that obvious. And this is what he says. This is his excuse for calling. This is what he calls taking care of his state and doing his patriotic duty as an American, which the majority of my state and every other and the majority of America actually believes. They actually believe him to be true. So that's the long and the short of it. Surprisingly enough, this is less than 30 minutes. And that's fine. It's nice to give you a short one every now and then. Usually I'm babbling and going on and on and on, trying to cover all the angles to this one subject and blah, blah, blah. Y'all take care. Y'all take it easy. If you like what you're seeing, if you like what you're hearing, check me out some more. Like, subscribe, whatever. And if you want to hear and not so much look at my mug, I am again on anchor.fm/Chris-comments. It's a podcast off of Spotify. And look me up sometime. Most of the posts are the same as this one anyway. There's a couple that are different, and it was mostly because of the times that I was restricted. I had a strike, and then I had a second strike against me through YouTube. But yeah, that podcast, you don't really have to look at me. You can actually just hear me while, like the way I listen to other people's podcasts, when doing the chores, drinking my coffee, stuff like that. So yeah, that's the long and the short of it. Hope you all take care of each other, keep looking out for each other and everything. We'll see you next time. This is Chris on Chris's Comments, on Common Sense, on Common Ground, signing out.